Hello, friends. Today's chapter of the day is First Chronicles chapter 27. And First Chronicles has maybe been dragging on a little bit for you, so I think it's helpful to figure out what's going on here. And what's going on is this is all kind of flowing from this census that David had taken. We read about, Satan kind of inciting David to take this census, and David taking the census and all the consequences that he had as a result of this census, where he kind of got to pick his punishment from God. That's back in First Chronicles chapter 21. Now we're in 27, and we're getting really some of the results of this census. That's what's going on here. And what we see first is we see information about David's army. And really kind of an interesting concept. What we see is that the army is divided into 12 divisions of 24,000 men in each division. And what they do is they have each division serve for a month. And then once they've served their month, then the next division comes up and serves. So kind of an interesting concept about how to keep your country safe, how to keep your army fresh, and how to make it not a huge an economically devastating thing to serve in the military. People just serve their month and then go on with their life. And the other thing you see that always alters my mind is you see the size of Israel. Here we have an army. This is just the men who are fighting age, and the army has 300,000 people in it. So we know that Israel is millions and millions of people strong as far as population is concerned. So that to me is really fascinating, not only in the way they operate, but just in the sheer size of Israel, because we really don't expect that when we think about, humble little Israel in those days. And then the other thing that I think is really unique and telling as far as the character of David in First Chronicles chapter 27 are verses 23 and 24, because we really see the two sides of David in this little snippet from the chapter. And here's what they say. We're starting with verse 23, obviously, because it wouldn't make any sense to start with 24. 23. David did not take the number of the men 20 years old or less, because the Lord had promised to make Israel as numerous as the stars in the sky. So here we go. David's saying, Lord, I trust in your promises. I know what you said you're going to do, and I know you're going to do it. Therefore, I'm not going to have to count kids. I'm not going to have to deal with people under 20, because I know that we're going to continue to flourish. So what a picture of the trust of David and the reliance of David on God fulfilling his promises. And then the next verse, verse 24. Joab, son of Zeruiah, began to count the men, but did not finish. God's wrath came on Israel on account of this numbering, and the number was not entered in the book of the annals of King David. So despite all this trust, despite complete faith in God to fulfill his promises, David's punished because he's taking a census that he wasn't supposed to take in the first place. We see, I think it's in Exodus, somewhere in the Pentateuch, we see God say, do not take a census unless I command you to do so. And here's David taking one, really in his own pride. So here at the end of David's life, this is the transition from David to Solomon. We're talking about the building of the temple and David making plans that Solomon's going to finish. We see this, I don't know if it's balance with this bipolarity in David's character, where he's so trusting in God, but he's also a man in the flesh, and he's subject to his own pride and his own sin. And I think we can take comfort in that. We can take comfort in knowing that God uses people that are crippled by sin. I mean, he refers to David as a man after his own heart, and yet we see David struggle with sin throughout his life. So instead of letting ourselves get deceived and taken off track by our sin, we can look at it and say, I'm like David in the fact that I have moments of great faith and moments where I'm weak and rebellious and ignorant. And that descendant of David, Jesus, he made it so that sin was taken care of. He paid the price for that just because I had faith in him. And since he knew I was going to have faith in him, he gave me that faith in the first place. So God started and completed the circle of our relationship with him, so that even though we have faith like David, broken, sporadic faith, we're seen as perfect before God because we are in Christ if we're believers. So take comfort in that. Um, and take joy in seeing those little pieces of the gospel in the Old Testament. They certainly take a lot longer to develop in the Old Testament, but the gospel's still there. The gospel didn't start in Matthew chapter 1. It started in Genesis chapter 1. Well, at least that's when God started telling us about it, because he had this plan since before time began. So that's it for 1 Chronicles chapter 27. Hope you are keeping up on this. I know it's a little bit of a battle, but there's so much here, and it's such a blessing to stay in it, and such a blessing to be reading it with others. So God bless you all.